Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review of qualifying for the 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix. Pretty exciting session, pretty tense. Quite a few crashes as well, so I think the session ended at, like midnight, would have been 12:30, 1 a.m. my time. Luckily, doing this review, watch qualifying in the morning, so no issues there. So rainy conditions to start Q1. Drivers, however, going out on slick tires. And rain possible with 12 minutes left in the session, so drivers really wanting to get out there early, set a lap time in. Yeah, track seems to be raining a bit as well, or track seems to be rubbering in quickly, so the times were dropping very, very fast. Joe, Gasly, Bottas, Hulkenberg, however, were the drivers in that bottom five at risk of being eliminated in Q1. Sargent goes off at turn one, big lockup there, but luckily, he actually hit the barrier and damaged his front wing there. But luckily for him, he was able to rejoin and continue. Despite the rain, time still improving, and at this point, after kind of the second runs, because drivers knew that there was a possibility that the track conditions would get worse, so they were really trying to get in as many laps as possible. So Ricciardo, Stroll, Magnussen, Zhou, and Hulkenberg bottom five at this point. And then a driver who really needs to be having a good weekend does not have such a good moment. Perez, big crash at turn 8, brings out the red flag, and it looks like he just lost it on corner entry. Goes into the barrier sideways, could easily be a completely smashed gearbox from that. And yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Track still, so obviously red flag passes. Track's still quite slow, I guess from the rain. So Russell, first driver to go out after that red flag, 5 seconds slower through the first two sectors. His second lap he did improve, but not by a whole lot. With 2 minutes left in the session, track really gripping up, and we ended up with Perez, Russell, Zhou, Ocon, and Gasly out in Q1. So Russell, I think, really suffered from being that first driver to go out at the end of the session. Unfortunately for him, knocked out in Q1. Perez as well. Of course, he was not going to be able to take any further part in qualifying, so it didn't really matter. But I guess for him, best case scenario, he starts 16th tomorrow. For Alpine, I don't know what they were doing. They decided to have both cars in the garage at the end of the session, so they basically could have gotten into Q2. Don't know if they thought they were safe and they were trying to save tires, but yeah, they ended up 19th and 20th in qualifying. So yeah, good job, guys. And Ricciardo of all drivers ends up going fastest in Q1, definitely taking advantage of the very quick conditions at the end of the session. Q2 pretty uneventful compared to the other two sessions. Bottas, Sargent, Albon, Hulkenberg, and Ricciardo were in the bottom five after the first run. However, Ricciardo had not set a time yet, clearly trying to save tires at this point. Verstappen leads Piastri by 0.015 seconds, so very, very close at the top between the McLarens and the Red Bull, something that we would see later in the session as well. But at the end of the session, Hulkenberg, Bottas, Albon, Sargent, Magnussen all out Q2. Hamilton 1/100th of a second away from being knocked out in Q2, so a little bit lucky for him. And Norris was fastest in that Q2 session when it was all said and done. Q3, rain possible with 5 minutes left in the session, and could be a one run only type of scenario. So drivers were really rushing to get laps in early in the session, a bit similar to Q1. Verstappen sets a benchmark of 1:15.555, and Piastri 3/10 back. Looked like he made a little bit of a mistake first corner there, so that might have contributed to that 3/10 lost. Norris, however, sets a really, really strong lap, 3/10 ahead of Verstappen after the first two sectors, and at the end of that lap, it was a 15.227, so a little bit above 3/10 of a second there to go top of the pile after that run. After that first run, you have Norris first, Verstappen second, Piastri third, and then Leclerc fourth, Hamilton fifth. Piastri goes out for a second lap. There is light rain, but doesn't seem to be affecting the track conditions too much. So it's a purple sector 1, green sector 2, and goes P2 0.22 off of Norris. So very, very close to taking provisional pole position. Verstappen not able to improve as much, only goes 0.046 off of Norris. So the top three in qualifying covered by half a tenth of a second, so very, very fine margins between the McLaren, between the Red Bull. Then we get a big crash from Tsunoda, which brings out the red flag. He basically just looks like he lost it on the outside of turn 5. Looked quite strange, so it basically looked like he just kind of understeered off the track. The exit of that corner actually goes airborne if you look at the onboard camera, and then takes out a whole bunch of bollards, and yeah, pretty heavy damage. But we'll see if the team's able to rebuild the car in time for qualifying tomorrow. They might have to break curfew for that. Verstappen out of the car decides it's not worth setting another time, perhaps run out of tires as well. But a couple cars, including the McLarens, are at the end of the pit lane, and they decide, okay, we might as well just go for it. But the times were much slower than before Tsunoda's red flag crash. So yeah, no big improvement there. So a bit of an anticlimactic end to the qualifying session there. Now, taking a look at the grid for tomorrow's Grand Prix, you have an all McLaren front row. First time in a while that's happened, I'm sure, especially in qualifying. So, Norris leads Piastri, and then Verstappen P3 to lead Red Bull. Sainz fourth, a bit opportunistic, I think, getting that time in, but has looked pretty strong all afternoon. Hamilton fifth, Leclerc sixth, Alonso seventh, Stroll eighth. Best session from Aston Martin a while. Hopefully they can convert that into some good points. But of course, they'll have to contend with Perez and Russell down in 16th and 17th, I feel. And then you have the two RBs, Ricciardo 9th, Tsunoda 10th, and then 11th, Hulkenberg 12th, Bottas 13th, Albon 14th, Sargent 15th, Magnussen 16th, Perez 17th, Russell 18th, Show, and then the back row is the two Alpines, 19th, Ocon, and 20th, Gas. I also want to say for Sargent, was a pretty decent session. Looked like he might out-qualify Albon at certain points, but unfortunately, his deficit, his run of being out-qualified by Albon continues, and he's yet to out-qualify him in a main qualifying session. So there you go. There's my review of qualifying for the 2024 Hungarian Grand Prix. Looking forward to the Grand Prix tonight. Should be an interesting one. Of course, track conditions will be very, very different. So I expect tire wear to be high. I also expect to see some reliability issues perhaps start to creep in with those high temperatures. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.